Hi everyone. We're live on multiple platforms, so I'm just saying hi to everybody, which means we're gonna get more questions because we've got more people that we're connecting with. So today we wanted to come live with all of you to do a Q&A. I know that egg donation, being an egg donor or using an egg donor usually comes with a lot of questions. There's lots of stuff that comes up. So as a result, I wanted to be able to answer all those questions for all of you, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing today. So before we get started, I just want to let everybody know that we are the YourEggs egg donation agency. We specialize in supporting couples who want to start a family, but need a little bit of help. Need to find an egg donor that they can use to, achieve the family of their dreams. And so we work with women who want to donate their eggs and with couples who want to use women who donate their eggs to achieve that family. So we're going to answer your questions live today to be able to make the process, or hopefully make the process a little bit easier and smoother for all of you, because it can be complicated or feel complicated. It can feel overwhelming, and so we want to make it just as easy and smooth as possible. So we did get some questions in advance, which is where I'm going to start, and then as we get additional questions, we will just pivot to those and we'll go from there, and we're going to have fun. So as you have questions, please just drop them in the comment section, and that will be great. So the first question that I have is, how long does the process take? Well, this process can take a while depending on which avenue we're talking about. So there's multiple ways to answer this question. So if you are an egg donor and you want to donate your eggs, your timeline is going to be more dependent on the timeline of the intended parents, the couple who want to utilize you. When you are wanting to donate your eggs, you reach out, you fill out the application, you get screened, and once you get approved, now you're in this little bit of waiting game, waiting to have a couple select you, so that you can so they can use your eggs. Sometimes that can happen very quickly in a month if everything works smoothly and the right couple is matched with you, or it can take months beyond that. One way that it can be a little bit shorter as an egg donor is if you are just donating eggs that are going to be frozen and then selected by a couple later on to be used. And so that can happen on your timeline. As an intended parent, if you are a couple who is wanting to utilize egg donation, then the timeline is really dependent on two factors. One is you. How have you filled out all the application? Have you moved forward? How quickly does it take you to select a donor? And then the next piece of that is making sure that the donor you've selected is actually available. Sometimes their timeline is a little bit off. So we just had a couple who selected or narrowed it down to 3 donors. And when we reached out to those donors, 2 of them were ready immediately and one was going to be ready next month. And so depending on which one of those donors that couple chooses will influence that timeline. But sometimes, it's the summer right now. Sometimes people are on vacation or they're waiting for school to start or whatever it might be. And so that might influence their availability. So it's about your timeline as a couple, and then the availability, the timeline of the donor itself. Usually it happens within 1 to 3 months though, once you've started the process and you've been able to narrow it down. So hopefully that was a good thing for all of you, that information. I will say that that question is often asked, and we had that submitted in advance. So here's another question that was sent in advance. It says, once I pick a donor, how soon until a donor is ready to start? We kind of just answered that question before when I just answered it. It can vary, but usually it's within that 1 to 3 month time frame. Sometimes it could be a little bit longer. All right. How do I choose an egg donor? What a great question. Well, there's a couple different ways that you can choose an egg donor. First is you can go onto our website, register and look at our database. Our database has over 1,000 donors. It's a huge database, actually one of the largest, if not the largest, in the country. And so you can go onto the database and start to search for your criteria. Another way that you can do it, which is often easier and a little bit smoother for all of you couples who are looking for donors, is that you reach out to our team. And our team can ask you a series of questions. They can help filter through your priorities and what's really important for you, and they can help you narrow it down and select some donors or help give you some options. That example I just gave you of that couple who had three options for a donor, our staff helped them narrow it down to those three, and then we were able to reach out to them because they liked those three options, right? So that process also will speed it up for you as well. Do you have videos of donors? A great question. So the short answer to that question is yes, we do have videos of donors, but not all donors are comfortable being on video to start, and not all donors have been asked to be on video. So if you find a donor that you like, and we don't have a video of them, but you would like a video of them, you can always reach out to us. We can reach out to the donor to see if that's something that they're open to doing. We always just like to say that not all donors are open to doing a video, but usually we can get a video from them. Another question we have is, how much information do we have access to about the donor? One is, you should have a ton of really practical, useful information about the donors. You should have medical history, their characteristics. They fill out a whole questionnaire that you would have access to. What do they like? What don't they like? Their educational background. So you'll have a lot of information. We also have a lot more information on the back end that we have access to. So if there's something that you don't see there, you can always reach out to us. And if we don't have that, we can always reach out to the donor to ask that. So anything that you're curious about, any information that you want to know more about, we can find that information and ask that information if we haven't already done so and if we already don't have that. I see a bunch of new people joining, so welcome everybody. I do want to invite you all to drop some questions. If you have them, let me know what questions you have. We're here to support you. So this is a Q&A of egg donation and being an egg donor. So whatever questions you have, just let us know. All right, and I do have others that we're gonna keep going into. We have some other questions that were submitted prior. Let's see here. What are the requirements to become an egg donor? Another great question. So usually, the first requirement is age, anywhere between 19 and 32. We also do a screening process, and that screening process also requires some medical evaluation. And so the donors have to check off all those boxes. They have to pass all of those areas and all of that criteria to be able to become a donor. Another criteria is that we don't accept donors who have donated a lot of eggs in the past, multiple donation cycles in the past. So we do have a cap on that as well. So there are those criteria, but I think the most important thing if you're considering being a donor is just reach out to our team. Go to our website, fill out an application just to inquire, and then we can start that process and see if you qualify. And I think that's really the easiest way to go ahead and do that. By the way, our website is YourEggs.com, if you don't already know that. Another question, actually this is another question from a donor. It says, where do I apply to be a donor? I just answered that question. It's on our website. You just head on over to YourEggs.com, and that is the easiest way to do it. What if I live outside of the United States? So this is a good question for both donors or intended parents. If you are, the biggest thing that happens when you live outside of the United States is there's some additional charges or fees, I should say. So we can work with couples or donors from all over the world, but if you don't live in the United States, you're gonna have to travel, and as a result, those costs are passed on to the intended parents. So if an intended parent chooses a donor who is not from inside the United States, there will be some additional fees as a result of that. Yeah, but we work with couples and donors from all over the world. How long does it take to get matched? Donor asked this question. Again, I answered that earlier, but a simple recap of that is that it really depends on the intended parents. So it can happen as quickly as a month. It can take months beyond that to happen depending on if you are a good match for the couples and you fill the criteria of what they're looking for. Yeah. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Post your questions if you've got them. What is the success of egg donor IVF? Wonderful question. We get this all the time. If you are a couple who's been struggling to get pregnant, you have used IVF in the past and you haven't been successful, I want you to know that using an egg donor on your fertility journey will increase your chance of success upwards of 90 to 95%. So your chances of success using an egg donor increase dramatically, and that is one of the biggest reasons why couples decide to use an egg donor. What other questions do we have here? How long does it take to get a match and retrieve the eggs? Great question. So to get a match really depends on you. What are the personality traits, the criteria that are most important for you as a couple that you're looking for? And how picky are you going to be in finding those donors? And so that's really probably the longest piece of the whole process, is selecting that donor and narrowing it down to who you want to choose. I always suggest starting as with a wide of a net as possible, and then you could slowly narrow that down over time as you look at who the donors are, and that might help to speed up that process. And also being a little bit flexible. If there's some key things that you're looking for, those should be at the top, and then everything else, maybe the donor you want doesn't have one or two things, but if you're willing to work with them, that could speed up the process. And then the egg retrieval piece of that just really is dependent on the availability of the donor at that point. All right, how do I get started searching for a donor? The best way to get searching for a donor is to go to our website or to reach out to our team. That's the best way to make that happen. I found a couple of donors I like. How do I decide on one? I think you reach out to our team to discuss the pros and cons of them, and then they can help filter that for you and decide on which ones would be the best ones, because they can also reach out to the donor to see what they need and how long and when their availability will be. So I think that can work out. All right. Let's see here. Another question that we have. Is it difficult to get the characteristics I'm looking for? We have never had a couple have difficulty finding someone, but again, it just depends how picky you're going to be. What's the most important thing for you? Is the most important thing their education? Is the most important thing the way they look? Is the most important thing where they're from? What is the most important thing? If you narrow it down to, let's just say, 2 or 3 key things that you want, then the rest will really work themselves out and should be just fine. Let's see, what other questions we have. Oh, this is great. From a donor perspective, okay, what is the time commitment to become an egg donor? The biggest time commitment is going to be when you're in the process of donating your eggs. And that process from start to finish will take somewhere between 4 to 8 weeks. Okay, depending on the type of cycle that they're going to do and how much medication you need and where you are in your menstrual cycle. So that is probably the biggest amount of time. Other than that, it's just filling out the application and getting moving. The other question we hear a lot is how are you compensated as a donor? How are you compensated? That's a great question as a donor. Well, one, you're donated financially. The amount that you're compensated for varies, okay? But I know there's another question here about when do I receive my payment? So you're going to be compensated along the way for any expenses, but the day of the day of retrieval, you will leave with your check. How much varies depend on each individual donor. Yeah, it depends if this is your first time that you're donating or if this is your second or third time donating. The more you've been a successful donor and had a successful pregnancy, the more that the compensation increases. Yeah. All right. Let's see if there's any other. Can I bring a +1? Donors always ask, can I bring a friend? Can I bring somebody? Absolutely you can, and we want you to bring somebody. Okay, we want you to bring somebody. You're going to need some support while you're here, and it's really important that you have someone to be with you and support you through that process. Let's see what other questions we have that were submitted. Is it possible to use more than one egg from the same donor? So as intended parents, this is a really valuable question. And this does make sense. So the short answer is yes, you can use more than one egg from the same donor. And really we look at it as batches. So if you are using one donor, you should be able, your agreement is going to be to get a certain number of eggs from that donor, whether that is 6 or 9 or 12 or all of them. But if you have a certain amount and then in the future you don't have any more eggs and you want to use that egg donor in the future as well for more eggs to create more embryos, that is always a possibility, assuming that that donor is available. But we recommend trying to get as many eggs in the beginning to create as many embryos as you want so that you have that potential in the future to have siblings from the same donor. Are your donors screened? 100%, they are all screened. They have to be screened genetically, medically, psychologically. All of that has to happen. So that is a given across the board with all of our donors. Great question. Another great question about costs for intended parents. How much does it cost to use an egg donor? That can vary. We have flexibility with how we do our pricing for our egg donors based on the amount of eggs that you want and if you're going to share them. So if you get 3 eggs or 6 eggs or 9 eggs or 12 eggs, that cost varies. And if you do a split cycle, that also will be different, meaning that you're sharing the eggs that donor gives or produces, and you're sharing that with another couple. That can also lower the cost. So it varies depending on how many eggs you want and if you're willing to share some of those eggs that the donor produces. And what if my donor lives in another state? That's very common. It's not uncommon to happen. And our suggestion is that, not my suggestion, then there's just a little bit of extra travel fees that are incurred as a result of that. Do we have any other questions coming up across the board?
Yes, we had one question. If you're a carrier for sickle cell, does that automatically reject my application?
Yes, it does. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, those sorts of genetic issues are things that we're screening for, by the way, and that's why we do the screening process.
And then another one said, would it count in your favor if you're a first-time donor but a mom of 3? Would it affect the money?
It doesn't affect the amount that you would be compensated on that specific cycle. It does show that you can produce good eggs, so that's good. But we base our compensation based on the amount of times you've actually donated. Yeah. And yeah. So let's see if we have any other questions. As a donor, does the egg retrieval take long and can I travel after? So the egg retrieval does not take that long. You're probably in the office for a total of about 2 hours roughly-ish, depending on if we're running behind, then it might be a little bit longer. And then can you travel after? We really recommend traveling 2 days later. not traveling immediately after the retrieval. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody? We've answered all the questions that we've gotten in advance and all the questions from all of you. I'm so excited that we were able to do this. Hopefully you all found this valuable. I think this was awesome. But if you have further questions that come up after, if you're watching the recording, then please go ahead and drop those questions here as well, and then we will answer those for all of you. Again, if you need to reach us, reach out to us through our website at YourEggs.com, and we're wishing you all a successful fertility journey and look forward to supporting you all. Bye.